I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Lincoln Lancaster County Planning Commission of October 29th, 2025. A printed agenda is available outside the hearing room, and a copy of the full agenda, including the staff reports, are available online or at the Planning and Development Service Department, room 213. The Open Meetings Act is posted just inside the doors at the back of the room. In addition, a copy of all staff reports and other relevant documents for the matters to be considered by the Planning Commission are included in a binder that is located on the dais and is available to the public for review. Out of the courtesy for those attending this meeting, commissioners and the staff, cell phones may not be used in the chamber during any portion of this meeting. We appreciate your cooperation. Please note that the Planning Commission action today is final on the following item. Item 1.2, Special Permit 13013A. Any aggrieved person may appeal final action of the Planning Commission to the City Council or the County Board by filing a notice of appeals with the clerk within 14 days following the action of the Planning Commission. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held October 15th, 2025.
So moved, Campbell.
Second, Edens.
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost,
Abstain.
Joy.
Yes.
Minutes approved.
The next item of business is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be called at the same time and will not be scheduled for a separate public hearing unless there is a request from someone wishing to speak or at the request of a commission member. I will now ask Shelley to read all the consent agenda items into the record. Once those items are read, she will ask if there's anyone wishing to speak. If you wish to speak on an item that's on the consent agenda, we would ask that you stand and state that item. That item will then be removed from the consent agenda and scheduled as a separate public hearing under Section 3 of today's agenda. All items remaining on the consent agenda will be voted upon in a total with motion for approval. Shelley, will you please call the items on the consent agenda?
Item 1.1A, Annexation 25009 to annex approximately 9.80 acres with an associated change of zone on property generally located at the southeast corner of West Old Cheney Road and Southwest 12th Street. Item 1.1B, change of zone 25024 from AG Agricultural District to R3 Residential District on approximately 9.80 acres, also on property generally located at the southeast corner of West Old Cheney and Southwest 12th Street. Item 1.2, Special Permit 13013A to change the use on the locally landmarked LAFB remote facility from a disassembly recycling facility to contractor services generally located at 6901 West Adams Street, and this is final action. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these items?
There are not.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting these sites to be disclosed?
There are not.
If there is anyone here wishing to speak on these consent agenda items, please stand and state that item.
We do not see anyone here that would like to speak on the consent agenda items. We would now entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
I would move that we approve the consent agenda, Campbell.
Second, Edens.
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Approved 8-0.
There are no requests for deferral, so we will now proceed to public hearings. Prior to staff making a brief presentation, each staff person should state their name, agency, and address. The applicant will then be requested to present their testimony, followed by those who wish to testify in support, followed by those who wish to testify in opposition. The staff will then be given an opportunity for rebuttal. If during your testimony you have copies of documents or materials you would like distributed to the Planning Commission members or included as part of the record, please provide them to the clerk. Each person testifying should state their name and address and shall have 5 minutes to speak unless additional time is requested and granted. The clerk will use the light system to help aid your timing for your testimony. The lights will appear on the monitors provided. The clerk will indicate when you have 1 minute remaining to wrap up your testimony. The red light indicates that your 5 minutes have expired. Once the final minute has lapsed, the clerk will indicate that your time is up. The Planning Commission will vote immediately at the close of the public hearing unless the commission votes to defer action or continue the public hearing. Shelley, please call the first public hearing item.
Item 4.1A, Annexation 25008, to annex approximately 13.12 acres on property generally located on the southwest corner of South 70th Street and Yankee Hill Road, associated with item 4.1B, change of zone 05068I, an amendment to add approximately 13.12 acres and 161,000 square feet of commercial floor area to the existing planned unit development for the woodlands at Yankee Hill PUD, generally located on the southwest corner of South 70th and Yankee Hill Road, associated with item 4.1C, Comprehensive Plan Amendment 25006, to amend the Lincoln Lancaster County 2050 Comprehensive Plan to revise the future land use map from residential low-density use to commercial use, and to adjust the future growth tier designation from Tier 1 Priority C to Tier 1 Priority A on property generally located on the southwest corner of South 70th and Yankee Hill Road. I will also note that a staff memo dated October 28th was sent to Planning Commission members regarding revisions to the staff report for Annexation 25008 and change of zone 05068I. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these applications?
There are not.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting any of these sites to be disclosed?
No, there are not.
All right, good afternoon. I'm Jacob Schlange, Planning and Development Services Department, 555 South 10th Street. As Shelley noted, there are 3 applications here today. They are all very interconnected, so I'm going to kind of talk about all 3 of them at the same time. So first, we're looking at an annexation of approximately 13 acres here at the southwest corner of South 70th and Yankee Hill. This is contiguous to the city limits, obviously, and while it is shown in the future growth tier as Tier C, Tier 1 Priority C, it really should be taken in consideration separate from the area to the west. Something that you'll hear me note a couple times is that this is a pretty steep grade change from South 70th Street up to the west edge of the property. The reason that this entire area to the southwest of that intersection was deemed Tier 1 Priority C is because it's not something that could be readily served with gravity-fed sewer, but this area could actually be served with city services. As I said, it's kind of being taken separately from the area to the west in our planning considerations. So for that reason, that is why the comprehensive plan amendment was suggested to, or was proposed to change the growth tier from growth tier 1 priority C to growth tier 1 priority A, because it can be served with city services. As part of this application, there is an amendment to the PUD. This is to add these 13 acres to the Woodlands at Yankee Hill PUD, which is immediately to the east across 70th Street. So this would add 13 commercial buildings, each on their own lot. Currently, this land is shown in the future land use map as residential, not commercial, and so that's the other portion of that comprehensive plan amendment, is to change this from a future land use of urban density residential to, low density residential to commercial use. So there's a couple things that I would note about the change in use that is proposed, is that in the north portion of the property, generally to about here, is the pipeline planning area, and the comprehensive plan does say that new residential development would not be encouraged in the pipeline planning area. So that is something that we are sensitive to as we consider the future land use in this location. And there's various things with the grade as well that make this not necessarily an ideal location for residential development. I would say that one thing with that grade is that it would be very challenging to connect Marlin Lane here over to the existing property here, and for that reason, it's not going to be connected there to the residential property to the west. So as I noted, this is going to be a commercial addition to the PUD. This is a site plan that shows how there will be 13 buildings for commercial uses and, 15 buildings, 13 in block 60 and 2 in block 61. And a couple of other things I will note about this plan. A deviation was applied for and approved by LTU that would allow for a right-in only at this location on South 69th Street. So because it is so close to the intersection at South 70th and Pine Lake Road, it doesn't meet the access management standards for the location of that access point. However, a right-in only would actually alleviate some of the traffic going to the roundabout, because people who are destined for these commercial businesses in the future could turn in at this location rather than going through the roundabout and adding traffic at that location. But because it is so close to the roundabout, a right out at this location is not approved by LTU. So a few other things that I will note. In the PUD, this will have an underlying zoning of R3. However, the regulations that it will follow will be the H4 commercial regulations. This is something that is consistent with other locations throughout the city. The H4 zoning district was actually designed to be a commercial district that is adjacent to or in a suburban setting. We have multiple other places in the city where H4 is adjacent to residential uses, and in fact, on the east end of the Woodlands at Yankee Hill PUD, you will find the same situation with H4 zoning immediately adjacent to residential uses. Let's see. There are a few things I will note that are still in consideration and in discussion with LTU, both with watershed management and with traffic. So those will be things that you will likely hear about today. But everything that I've addressed here relates to the annexation, the change of zone, and the comprehensive plan amendment that would change the future land use designation and would also change the growth tier that this property is located in. So I'll stop there, and can I answer any questions for you?
Do we have any questions at this time? None at this time? Oh, wait, yes, we do. So sorry.
Yes, can you tell us what is allowed and what is not allowed in H4?
I don't have the use group table memorized. It does allow a number of commercial uses, office uses, things of those nature. I would say it is a little bit of a heavier commercial use than an O office zoning district would be.
And just to clarify, it would actually be zoned R3.
Correct.
But the intent is that it would follow H4, or is there anything that would make following H4 a requirement?
So this would be added to the PUD, which is the zoning overlay. And for this particular PUD, the entire PUD is zoned R3 as the underlying zoning. So if you look at the zoning map, what you will see is R3 across the entire thing. But within that PUD, some portions are following the B2 use regulations, and some portions are following the H4. So as I mentioned, on the east end of the PUD, there is, and I can show you again. So this area here follows the H4 zoning regulations. There's a number of commercial areas here, down in the southeast corner, that have been approved for following the B2 regulation. So similar to what already exists in the PUD, the underlying zoning would be R3, but it would follow those H4 regulations.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, we will hear testimony from the applicant.
I haven't been up here since we got a new, is this our new projector? Okay. It's been a minute. Christina Melgoza with Kruger Development, that's 8501 South 78th. And Jacob did a great job of explaining our main goals, but I do have some visuals to share, so that might help make it a little more clear. As he said, this is a continuation of our Woodlands development. our office, the Kruger Development Office, is in the Woodlands PUD. So we're right off of there, off of about 78th and Yankee Hill, off of one of those roundabouts. And if you've driven out there lately, you'll see quite a few commercial buildings have popped up over the last few years, ours included. And that's what's helping us feed this idea. These commercial buildings are inspired by what we're building there on 78th and Yankee Hill. They are gonna be stoned, bricked, cement hardy board, pitched shingled roofs. We're looking for something that's more transitional from that residential neighborhood and not such a harsh industrial look, which we do have in other commercial developments around Lincoln. Let me grab one of those to put up here. There's a couple of, 3 different pictures in that little packet, just a couple of different views. Okay, so here's the 70th and Yankee Hill roundabout, and that kind of gives you a 3D view of those buildings and, of course, the neighboring acreages up here on top of the hill. There's been several different considerations for this piece of ground over the last few years. It's actually been for sale for the last few years, and we have been in communication with the realtor a few different times with different ideas. At one point, that was multifamily apartments to be put there. One time it was self-storage, and now here's where we've landed with these commercial office buildings, which we think, of course, both for us and the sellers, it economically fits, but it's also perhaps the least intrusive on these existing neighbors and who will still be there. One of those photos in that packet will show kind of a better elevation of going north and south down the property line, where I think Jacob mentioned we will have a pretty hefty retaining wall. And that shows you that our roof lines on those buildings are even lower than what will be abutting us on those neighboring property lines. So instead of looking up into apartments or apartments looking down on you or even looking into an office building, hopefully they're only looking at the top of the roof lines. The least intrusive that we could come up with. And of course, there'll be slight landscaping features and things back there, but also we make a point of it to not have cascading light that will go out into those neighboring properties. So everything should be in the front of the buildings, into the parking lots, very light security lighting in the back of those buildings. And I know there's some questions on use, which of course right now there's no one moving in yet, right? So there's a lot of different options that could come up. But at our office and the existing buildings that are up there, to give you an example, we've recently had, a chiropractor, an orthopedic, a pediatric dentist. We've had a veterinarian, a party planner. Those are the kind of uses that we see going in here, to give you an example. And those buildings that we have up there have a lot of demand. They're selling quickly. And these are buildings that we would be looking to sell. It's not a long-term leasehold. We are looking for individuals who want to own their own space as a small business owner, whether that's the entire building, whether it's, condoed out in its individual units. But that's the purpose and what we're looking for here. And of course, looking for your support today, here to answer any questions. And then we have E&A Consulting here as our engineers to go over all the particulars.
Who would like to start with questions? Nick, Commissioner?
We've received several letters being very concerned about the screening that exists to the south and to the west. Can you explain whether any of that would remain in place or whether you're replacing it with new screening?
So I know the screening today is that there's a lot of trees there, right? And of course, as we develop, we'll have to remove those trees. But one of the things is that retaining wall will be a good 10 foot, I'll let Rick confirm that, a good 10 foot off the property line. So there should still be remaining foliage there, and hopefully we're protecting the roots of some of the trees that are on the other property owners' lines. That will stay. It would be hard for us to plant a tree down in this back area because, again, it's a good 14-foot drop before it would do anything. But, I mean, we're open to putting some things back there, but I think the retaining wall itself sets us at an elevation where there's not a lot of screening needed. But, of course, those existing trees will be removed.
Is in that top tier of the retaining wall, is there a depth of space between the upper wall and the second wall?
I guess I'm not sure what you mean by upper wall and second wall.
I'm looking at the west wall and the one step down from,
I think this step down only looks that way because it's computer generated.
okay.
There's not a real step. Those step down in tiers equate to 1 foot, I believe. So it'll be a singular wall.
Okay, but you say there is 10 foot above that upper wall.
There's 10 foot between the wall and the abutting neighbors. So
Okay.
that retaining wall doesn't go right up to the property line.
And can you get Jacob's picture of the, unless you've got one, of the areas that exist today?
I think that's more helpful. This one perhaps?
Yes. On that space, I really don't see a whole lot of trees on the west side. It looks like 2 or 3 at the north end and maybe a few clear at the south, mid-south. And on the south end, I don't see, with the piece that goes on further south, I don't see a lot of plant material there either. Is that correct?
I think it's pretty,
It's lots of trees and shrubs there.
but I
We live there, so.
yeah. I think there is quite a bit of foliage there, even if it's not super apparent.
Is there a way to preserve that as much as possible?
Well, I don't think there's a great way to preserve it on our side of the property line.
Are you open to filling in spaces on the neighbors' properties to create a fuller screen?
I think that would be, Rick Kruger is not here today. He's not feeling the best, and I think that would have to be a question I would have to pose to him.
Okay.
I think we're definitely willing and able to work with neighbors. We've done things like that before, so it's a possibility.
Okay.
Yes, Commissioner.
This 10-foot retaining wall, will there be a fence or something to eliminate a fall hazard? Someone walks up to that and all of a sudden there's a 10-foot drop?
I'm gonna let the engineers tell me what I have to put there.
Good afternoon. Rick Onum, CNA Consulting, 2077 N Street. The retaining wall, the height is going to vary of that retaining wall anywhere from, going off from memory, I think some areas get as low as about 5 or 6 feet. Other areas get up as high as 14. That may be tiered in a couple spots just to save how far we have to put grid back to maintain it. But there would be room for some landscaping, maybe not necessarily trees, but shrubs at the top of that. And then obviously if it's tiered, we can kind of soften, but that softening would really be more from the west, looking west. But I think there definitely would be a room that we're going to say we're going to be at least 10 feet off of the property line to the top of the wall. So there's room for some landscaping at the top to soften the view. I guess the other thing I would point out is that we're not putting parking abutting the neighbors. We're not putting the entrances to the buildings abutting the neighbors. So it's going to be a fairly muted back of the building view, I guess, if you will, and not a lot of activity. Again, even the buildings would probably shield the neighbors from any parking lot lighting. So there's plenty of buffer, if you will, between the uses.
I guess I'm not as concerned right now with that question pertaining to the view as to a fall hazard.
And there are code requirements. So if you get above a certain height requirement, And if you're within a certain distance of a walking path, you're required to have railing. No, we would follow necessary codes for that.
That's it.
Just real quick, as we look at that site plan and we look at our setbacks, you, on the items we've reviewed, you have a 30-foot setback to property line, to buildable area. Could you just walk us through that from the neighbors?
Yeah, so there's a 30-foot area. The buildings themselves will be on individual lots. So got a lot of lines here, but this
Yeah.
darker line here is the actual lot. The building itself will be slightly smaller than that. It's likely that we might need a fire door out the back, and those doors can't swing past the property line. You know, so the building's probably going to be 3-4 feet off the property line, and there may be a 4 or 5 foot sidewalk abutting the back of the building. Again, that's all going to depend on how fire exiting works. But beyond that, that's really all you have for activity on the back side of the building.
Okay, and so the retaining wall starts at 35 feet? Is that what that indicates? Is that hard line is
The
there?
retaining wall would be within a 30-foot setback.
Within, okay. That sounds great. That's what I was wondering, thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
Wait,
Oh, so sorry, I didn't
Just
see.
to clarify, because you said it'd be 10 foot off the property line, you'd be at the 20-foot mark on that setback, right? Am I understanding that right? You said you had a 30-foot setback from the
Here
building
to the
lawn,
building envelope.
but that retaining wall would be 20
From the
foot, because you
building,
said there would be
approximately.
10 foot approximately from the property line.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, I was just clarifying, I got it.
Perfect.
I know,
That's what I kinda-
lots of numbers.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and if we get into a section where we have to step the wall, then it'd probably be 10 and 10.
Right.
Okay, excellent. Now I'll do a double look real quick. Okay, good. I think we're great for now. Thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
I was going to walk through some of the waivers if you want to.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and walk through those
I will
before-
not walk through the waivers.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's good. While you're up here, that'd be great.
And I guess I would say, maybe if you want to characterize this, I would say maybe it's an upscale version of the Trade Center down on 56th and Old Cheney.
I was just thinking that.
That's
exactly
So that's
was
kind
your
of, if you want
visual.
to, kind of want to think about use. And that facility has about 260,000 square foot building on 24 acres. We're talking about 160,000 square feet on 13 acres. So kind of comparable in terms of density. Obviously, that was done prior to a lot of landscaping requirements and stormwater requirements. So we have a different mix of green space in this one. We've kind of talked about already the site access would come off of roundabout at 70th and Yankee Woods Drive. That's the primary access. There is a access proposed again off of Yankee Hill Road. That access would be in. We've been having discussions with both planning and LTU that would allow that to have a right out temporarily during construction of the roundabout. And that we've asked that we'd have maybe the option to have up to about 25,000 square foot of space with occupancy in the event that the construction of the roundabout gets delayed beyond time frame of getting the buildings built. But that would be a temporary situation. Once the roundabout's done, that connection would be limited to right in only. So some of the waivers, there's the waivers reducing the setbacks. We've kind of talked about that with the retaining wall and providing the visual separation between those two uses. There's several waivers regarding non-typical roadway section, reduced paving width, street width, and street trees. That's all related to a street section that would have on-street parking through there. And basically, those waivers accommodate what we're showing here would be a typical roadway section with parking on both sides. One waiver that is not listed and that we've had discussions with in the recent days, we'll be requesting and have requested through planning this morning waiver to flood regulations, the section 2753 for minimum flood corridor. The rationale for that, I would zoom out. The drainage area coming to this point is just over the 40-acre threshold requirement for minimum flood corridor. And we've been working with watershed management in terms of what that would require, particularly as we've transitioned to the roundabout intersection, taking up some room. It makes it difficult to kind of create that open channel look. And so in order to not get into a bind and decide that we want to do something different than what would be according to the minimum flood corridor standards, we want to ask for a waiver of that. And so as a result of that, we're going to ask for a 2-week continuation so that we can get that properly advertised. But again, that's really, we're asking for that so that we don't get ourselves into a bind that we're not meeting design standards going forward.
Sorry, can I ask real quick? So we had the staff report, then we got a memo with changes, and that looks like it's 2.14.4, the minimum flood corridor, and there were already some changes there. And what you are saying is that there was a new change this morning that's not showing up here. So then you're wanting to ask for a 2-week delay on this entire application, or just one of the 3 items?
At this point, I think we'll just ask for a continuation on the entire application.
I'm sorry, say that again.
We would ask for a continuation on all 3 of the items.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so,
And then one other thing, related to, as we discussed, the access, temporary access at the connection up at Yankee Hill Road. We were wanting, and I apologize, I didn't print enough of these out for everyone. I do have one for the clerk. A slight change in language on the staff report. Staff report had restriction of that connection being modified prior to building permit, being any building permits issued. We'd like to restructure that to say that it would be limited to only 25,000 square foot of building occupancy. And again, that's really a contingency to make sure that if things go slower with roundabout construction, then we hope we're still able to do some construction, get some buildings going, and maybe get a tenant or 2 in prior, while that construction of that roundabout's being done. Because without that exit, that's the only way out. Without the roundabout, that would be the only way to get out of this subdivision. So,
Do you know what the city's anticipated schedule for that roundabout is?
there's a lot of things in play on that right now. Funding is probably the biggest one, and we're looking at potential Lincoln on the Move funds, so we're waiting on some answers from that, directed impact fees. It would be our goal to get that going next year, but a lot of things in play right now.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Any other questions now?
Hi.
We have some more here. Okay, Commissioner?
Since it sounds like we're going to delay this for 2 weeks, I just want to know at this point, have you met with the neighbors? Sorry, come on back.
Yes, we held a neighborhood meeting on Monday of this week. And it was, I know you guys send out letters, or the department sends out letters to folks in 200 feet radius or whatnot. I sent them out to, I think, where's Jacob? Can I have that back? I sent them out to all of these folks within 68th and Bolton down to Rebel Drive. And I think we had a good 80% or so that were able to attend the meeting and ask questions and comments. And I mean, I don't think there's anything that surprised them or surprised us, and we had a discussion about it, and it was generally positive. Of course, folks are, never super excited about the change. I mean, as developers, we believe it's a continuation of our Woodlands development, right? We have all those residential roofs, very few commercial buildings at the moment, and I'm actually still in charge of the Woodlands HOA, right? So folks ask me all the time, when are we gonna get this, that, or the other closer, right? I have to drive all the way here, all the way there, which I know sounds kind of silly, but those folks are excited to have new businesses. People who are small business owners themselves who live on the south side of town are excited to have more options to purchase and run their businesses on the south side of town, versus going somewhere such as the Trade Center. That is a little bit of a jaunt for them. So we definitely appreciate the feedback we received. We're definitely willing to work with neighbors. I mean, we want to be received well and, not be a great disturbance to them either. So I think it was positive.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
let me ask you a question. If people testify today and we delay it for 2 weeks, would they be able to testify again in 2 weeks, or would this be their testimony at this time?
Let's double check that, but typically you get to testify one time, whether that's today or at the deferral, but let's have staff tell us. Thank you, Steve.
Steve Hendrickson, Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. So, yes, we are going to have a request to continue the public hearing from the applicant because there's a few things they want to work on. That has been our general practice, is that if you testify today, you don't testify again in 2 weeks unless there was some new information presented in the meantime. So, for instance, if an applicant asked for a waiver that you were not aware of, you could testify to say, oh, this new information that came forward, I would like an additional comment on that.
Excellent. That's very good.
So that allows people that have made time to come today to testify if they would like, if they don't think they could come in 2 weeks, if the request for deferral is granted.
Correct. And in that interim, they could certainly send you a letter in that 2-week time period as well, if they've already testified.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions for Steve? Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to keep moving forward then for testimony in support of the 3 applications. Testimony in a neutral capacity for the 3. Testimony in opposition. Come on up and state your name and address, please.
Good day. My name is Claire Briney. I'm here from 8900 South 68th Street, which, for reference on the projector, is this property
Just a second,
right here.
until it comes up.
Okay. Perfect.
So this is my family's home right here, and so
I'm sorry, there it is, okay.
yes, right here.
Okay.
So we're quite close to the new proposed development, and I'm here to speak in opposition on behalf of my family for the rezoning of the development at South 70th and Yankee Hill Road. We find that this project threatens not just the character of our neighborhood, but the natural integrity and livability of the land that my family has called home for about 50 years. To give some personal context, my parents built their house here in the 1970s. That's the home that I grew up in, and my parents wanted to live outside the city in kind of their own private woodland. It was, at the time, built many miles outside of the Lincoln city limits. So my father actually planted most of the trees around this border by hand, and to create a natural barrier rather than a fence. Later, when I was born in the 1990s, he and I planted native trees and shrubs together along the property line, the majority of which we're concerned will be ripped out of the ground if the development project is approved. This property is also where we tend the peony garden, inherited from both of my grandmothers, which is just right at the property line there. And there's also a water feature, a gully with a natural spring that carries water out of the neighborhood down to 70th Street. So that spring supports the willow trees and native habitat that have thrived there for decades, and if this development proceeds, we are concerned that that ecosystem will be stripped away. The spring rerouted into commercial drainage, and the willows, vast roots likely torn out in the early land clearing. The project, as I understand it, would also create a 10-foot drop or so from our property line into the commercial lot, which is, again, just a few steps past this little garden that I mentioned on the east side of the house. That natural woodland buffer of trees and shrubs that has provided privacy and noise protection from the main roadway will presumably be gone, replaced with retaining walls and fencing that we are under the impression that we may have to pay for ourselves, as no compensation or compromise has been offered to my family or their neighbors that we're aware of for this loss, even though the value, the character, and the safety of our properties will be directly impacted. So beyond what I feel is a personal loss, I do also feel that the development is rather incompatible with its surroundings. The proposed change from residential low density to commercial use I do not find consistent with the comprehensive plan's intent to preserve the balance between neighborhoods and commercial corridors. The area's infrastructure, especially at the intersection of 70th and Yankee Hill, is already quite overburdened with the existing traffic, particularly with the school commuters of the recently developed schools in that area. And you often find children trying to cross between these neighborhoods, which is unsafe as the infrastructure with the sidewalks and access is not fully implemented at this time. So we feel that adding years of construction and commercial traffic will only heighten these risks. At the meeting on Monday with Kruger Development, they cited increased tax value and income to local schools as a benefit to nearby homeowners. However, our neighborhood over here is still outside of the Lincoln city limits. Our taxes and resources are devoted to the exterior of Lancaster County. That means that the supposed benefit of this development does not seem to extend to our neighborhood community, while we still do have to shoulder the noise, traffic, and environmental loss that it would cause. I see this proposal serving as kind of short-term private profit. It's not a community resource like a grocery store, a park, or community center. It is another block of private office space, which, despite the city already having an abundance of vacant commercial properties, this project reduces green residential land for financial gain, not long-term community benefit. So we deserve development that respects the existing residents, protects our natural environments, and grows the city sustainably. I do not feel that this plan does those things. It erases a landscape that has defined our homes and our lives for generations and replaces it with something that serves the developer, not the neighborhood. So I would urge a rejection of the annexation. Thank you for your time.
Any questions? Just a second.
Yeah.
Commissioner Campbell?
The plant material that you discussed, is it all on your property?
It bridges the property line. So having these things planted on our property line as a natural barrier nearly 50 years ago, the root structure has grown far into our neighbors on the east side. And I don't feel like there's enough distance between the proposed property line for the retaining wall that wouldn't, rip out the majority of the plant structure and remove that natural barrier through just degradation of the plant life, if not direct removal.
I would like to kind of.
Yep, well, you'll have to do that on your testimony, please. Thank you.
Can you tell me what kind of plants are along there?
Yes, I can't name the type of shrub. I want to say there's honeysuckle among it. We have a lot of cedars, pines, elms, and willows in the more, like the gully, the water flow area.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions for this testimony? Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional testimony in opposition?
Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Green. I live at 727 South 52nd Street, but my mother and father-in-law live at the property that we've been talking about. I have some concerns specifically about some of the requested waivers. This proposal represents a fundamental change to the character of the neighborhood, which has long been a quiet, family-oriented area, is being pressured by rapid and, in my opinion, poorly planned growth. Each new development chips away at the personality of the neighborhood, and NX 28005 would accelerate that decline. It is my assessment that the roads in the area are already used beyond their originally intended capacity, with the addition of new housing and recently opened schools nearby. Traffic congestion and safety concerns are arising. The developer has agreed to do road improvements from the roundabout down to the south end of the property. That, to me, does not address the entirety of the issues that will arise with additional traffic. It does address the term or the area immediately next to the property. However, traffic does not just affect the road immediately next to the property. Adding to that, I find the developer's request for a waiver on proximity to existing residential properties to be troubling. In my opinion, there's not been meaningful justification nor a sufficient plan to mitigate the noise, traffic, or visual disruption that this will cause to current residents. The stated mitigation plan of a change in elevation and only single-story buildings is not sufficient. Finally, they have a request to waive sidewalk access in their development. That tells me how much they've actually considered the residents of the area. Sidewalks are basic infrastructure. They connect neighbors, improve safety, and promote accessibility. If a developer isn't even willing to invest in something as simple as walkability, how can we trust their commitment to improving our community? This annexation in its current form is not responsible growth. It comes at the expense of the people who already live there. I urge the Commission to reject Annex 28005. Thank you for your time.
Any questions for this? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Additional testimony in opposition. And we are talking about the three. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Carolyn Bosin, CarolynBosin. I live at 6433 Country View. I am also the state representative for that area, so while I am not coming in that particular capacity, it is actually sort of in both, because my neighbors in that area have also reached out to me with concerns similar to those of, I believe it was pronounced Ms. Bliney and Mr. Green. I share their concerns on a personal level, but so do a lot of the individuals who live there. I'm not going to spend a lot of time reiterating what concerns they had. I'm going to focus a little bit more on the safety and infrastructure concerns that I've overarchingly heard, and in review of all the letters in opposition that were submitted were echoed in some way, shape, or form in those letters. Essentially, when I review this, it looks as though this is two steps here. One, we're rezoning what is essentially residential acreages. They're 3.5 acre lots in an established neighborhood. I was unaware they built that home 50 years ago. It's beautiful. It doesn't look that old. But a lot of these individuals have lived there 25 plus years. And we're second talking about annexing that property from county use to city use. And what I can tell you in that neighborhood right now is they all have 50-foot setback requirements. So no one is allowed to put any building on their property line within 50 feet. And what's being proposed is 30 feet, which is actually, as you pointed out, 20 feet. I think that's something we should also take into consideration. While I think a lot of the concerns that were raised in some of the letters were NIMBY-like concerns, and I don't want to sound unsupportive of economic development and the need for all of that, this is a little bit unique from the land that was developed along Yankee Hill between 70th and 84th, where there weren't existing properties there that were being disturbed as a result of those. I'll agree, those buildings along Yankee Hill between 70th and 84th are nice. I think they've done a really good job there, and I certainly see the use for that. This is a little bit unique because these are all residential properties in that development. We're essentially being asked to approve or stand by while we rezone an area for commercial use without the sufficient infrastructure in place before we do that. We're putting the cart before the horse here. We don't have roundabouts south of Yankee Hill all the way to the Standing Bear High School intersection. I can tell you, as someone who tries to turn left off of Country View Road every morning, it is a nightmare. We've had significant accidents. I cannot believe we have not had someone killed as a result of trying to turn onto or off of 70th Street into those neighborhoods. They're significantly congested. And without a really serious, meaningful plan for roundabouts along that area, unless you don't want people visiting this commercial property, which I assume is not the intent, you are asking to increase the traffic in an already congested area without the infrastructure there in advance of that proposed plan. So while there may be talks of a roundabout at Yankee Woods, I think was the discussion, that isn't there yet. And there isn't a roundabout south of that at Rebel, and there isn't a roundabout proposed south of that at Country View or at Rokeby. And those are all areas where you have a lot of individuals in neighborhoods turning onto and off of 70th Street at the same time of day, every day. The other thing I will tell you, I was unaware, I somehow missed the waiver of a sidewalk access. I think that's a significant concern that should not be overlooked. You have an elementary school on the northwest corner of that intersection. You have an elementary school on the southeast corner of that intersection, and you have kids crossing into those neighborhoods. One's a private school, one's a public school, and when families live in the opposite area, those kids are traveling along 70th Street and Yankee Hill where there are no sidewalks currently existing and crossing the street. Thank God my own kids don't do that. I would never let them cross that street, and I hope no other parent is forced to make their children walk to and from across that intersection. So I think there's a lot of questions unanswered here. I certainly understand they're asking for a continuance, and I appreciate the opportunity to share all these concerns with you, but for those reasons, I also oppose this proposal.
Okay, questions? Yes, please.
I will say in the report, our planning department does recommend denial of that waiver. So they do recommend that the sidewalks be installed. So just want to let folks listening know that we fully support sidewalks and we think that is important, and our planning department does recommend denial of that waiver.
Thank
Very
you.
good point. Other comments or questions? Thank you for your testimony.
Thanks.
Additional testimony in opposition. Okay. We will go ahead and move on with staff questions. Who would like to start? Commissioners? Rodenberg?
In 2 weeks, can we have a traffic count report and maybe an accident report for that 70th Street?
I don't know about an accident report. There was a traffic report that was submitted as part of this application that was reviewed by LTU. There are still some things to be resolved with LTU in terms of the temporary right out on Yankee Hill, but there was a traffic report involved with this application.
And they rubber stamped it?
So as part of that discussion, the plans shifted to the roundabout on South 70th at Yankee Woods Drive. So that was not initially part of the proposal and was not initially the way that the plans were submitted, but as a result of that traffic report, that was a determination that was made, was that the roundabout was going to be the better approach there.
Commissioner Campbell.
Can we get a memo from the planning department showing that traffic study?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect. Additional questions? Yes, Commissioner.
You may not know this, but our LTU friend might. How soon in the plans, long-term plans, is 70th Street going to be 4 lanes instead of 2?
We have somebody. See.
Steve Henriksen, Planning Department. So there's a couple of different things. First, start on the micro level. So as a part of this application, the applicant is agreeing to improve 70th Street from Yankee Woods Drive to the roundabout at 70th and Yankee Hill. And so that would be brought up to urban standards, and the idea is that that would be the main way in and out of this development, so left turns out of this would be using the roundabout. Part of the discussion between now and 2 weeks from now is just the timing of that, because it could take 16, 24 months to get that work done. And so do you have a building or so developed within the project using the access on Yankee Hill Road to a starting point? Beyond that, this street has currently, the last traffic count was 2024. It had 9,000 trips on it today. Just to give you some perspective, that's for 70th Street. So 70th Street, once you get up to Old Cheney Road, where it is 4 lanes, you have 26,000 trips. So while certainly it's 9,000 always sounds like a lot of trips for a 2-lane road, particularly where you at the intersection, is something that is suitable for that. Now, the left turns out at any intersection are always a challenge, particularly at the peak hours of the day. In our CIP, we don't have the scheduled improvement of 70th Street to 4 lanes further to the south, simply like we don't have that in many cases because we are dealing with a limited amount of funds. If we had an unlimited amount of funds, we would have a lot more 4-lane streets all over the community. And so this is something that the City Council has to decide all the time in terms of which are the priority streets to be improved. So at this time, that is not part of it. Just as general information, the citizens did approve the Lincoln on the Move continuation of the tax increase last spring, and we are looking at how that would be spent over the next 8 years, because that will help us working with developers to accelerate some of the improvements.
More questions? Commissioner?
The 9,000 count for 2024, was that before Standing Bear opened?
No, Standing Bear's not open.
When did Standing Bear open? Does anybody know?
Standing Bear would have opened, I think, before this, but you're right, just as 2024, I don't have it doesn't list a month.
Standing Bear opened in 2022 because they're doing their first junior
Yes,
class.
yeah, I think it's been open for several years.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't remember.
Other comments?
Oh,
you have
yes,
that
I
one?
do have
Okay,
one.
thank you, Commissioner.
Is the city planning at all concerned? Because I did hear a little bit about, like, you know, this is not, these buildings aren't really providing us services that would be our complete neighborhoods, right? A grocery store, a gas station, daycare. I mean, I guess some of those buildings could probably be daycares potentially. And you can't foresee this necessarily, so this might be a hard question, but are you worried that maybe some businesses that are inside the city now will vacate their spots, and so now we're just going to have all these vacant buildings in the city because those businesses are moving south for these buildings? I mean, I don't know that will happen, but are you worried at all about that? Are we lacking space for these businesses?
I guess I would say there is a perceived demand for more commercial in the southern part of Lincoln.
Okay.
And this location with the H4 zoning would allow a couple of those things that you did mention.
Okay.
Early childhood care facilities would be permitted.
Okay.
So some of those services could be allowed in the H4. There are a number of different uses that are permitted in H4, and so you know, without going down the
Right.
list and identifying which specific uses would be something that's serving the neighborhood on a day-to-day basis, I would say there's a good mix in H4 that would be permitted.
Okay. Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, thank you. Applicant rebuttal, please.
I'll address a little bit the concern about sidewalks. That's maybe a little bit confusing in terms of what we were asking for or what that was all about. The sidewalk along the east side of 70th Street in this area is programmed to be, there's a drainage way that runs along the east side of 70th Street. And the sidewalk on the east side of 70th is going to be replaced or constructed as a trail on the east side of that drainage way. So that's one thing. The the right-of-way is a little bit tight on the west side. We were initially looking at the idea of utilizing the sidewalk through the development to replace that or be used in replace of that. LTU didn't support that. As we've worked through some of the details of how roadway improvements will be looked at, we've backed off of that. There is still a little bit of anomaly, I guess, if you will, and that relates to what we're calling 63rd Street. So there will be a sidewalk along the east side on the front of these buildings, and then there will be a sidewalk along the front of these buildings, but not a sidewalk on the west side of this, basically, street parking apron. So it's in a non-traditional location, I guess is what we're calling it. There is sidewalk on both sides. It's just positioned where it's probably more likely to get used for those buildings. So that's the difference there. There was some comment about setbacks about it was 30 feet, but it was actually going to be treated more like 20, and I'm not sure what that meant. We do have a 30-foot setback, and then again, the buildings, that's to the property line, and the buildings have to be back from that if there's a door swing. So it is 30 feet.
So to clarify, I think the question was, here's the property line, 30 feet. The retaining wall does not happen in that 30 feet?
Yes, the retaining wall is within that 30 feet.
Okay, I think that's where they're saying. So they're saying if the retaining wall is within that, it's really only a 20-foot setback to the retaining wall. That's where the comment came from.
Okay. Setbacks don't regulate retaining walls, so.
Yeah, I'm just
Okay.
saying that's where the comment came from.
All right.
Before you take that exhibit down, I see a sidewalk along 70th Street, Yankee Hill Road, that comes just south of the roundabout and then crosses the street. And that continues on to the north, yes. And you're saying that from that point south, that is the drainage ditch, and it's impossible to put a sidewalk in there.
The drainage ditch runs, again, along the east side.
Okay.
So
What-
this
What about the south side or the west side of 70th, where I see the dotted lines behind buildings 12, 11, 10?
Yeah, so the sidewalk there will be essentially in a more traditional location that it would be on an arterial. Might be slightly closer to the curb than typical, just because we're tight. I would also say there's still some back and forth with LTU here. They would like to fund this as a similar cross-section to what is on Yankee Hill Road currently. Essentially one lane with a paved shoulder and a ditch. That doesn't facilitate a sidewalk right away very well. So we've kind of questioned, does it make sense? Should we pave the additional 6 feet it would take to make it a 2-lane in each direction, at least on the north or the southbound lanes, so that we can get the sidewalk in? Those are still discussions that are ongoing, and again, that's going to be kind of tied to funding a lot.
Can the 3D image shows the sidewalk that kind of circles the roundabout? And then, so is that accurate from what you were just
So
saying?
that-
And how would that, because that looks like that's for pedestrian crossing.
Right, so-
the street. How does that tie into the rest of the lot?
So what you're seeing there is essentially what's existing today.
Okay.
And that sidewalk terminates right now, right here.
Mm-hmm.
So that sidewalk would then continue down along the west.
Perfect, thank you.
I think it might be a little bit wider at that location. There'll be a 5-foot sidewalk on this.
Thanks. Okay.
Go ahead and continue with your rebuttal.
Any other specific stuff?
I was just going to add, as a part of our discussions with planning and LTU, we did actually offer to bring in the sidewalk that runs south along 70th into our development and run it in front of the buildings so that people would be able to access perhaps a more safer route instead of being along that heavily trafficked street. But they thought that would not, it would be confusing to a pedestrian to do that, but we did offer that as an option.
Okay.
Beyond that, I don't know that I have any other issues with anything you wrote down that you wanted to address specifically.
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's, perhaps there's always going to be a slight difference of opinions. And I know it's been mentioned that some don't believe this to hold a long-term value for the neighborhood, but obviously we would disagree. I mean, this is kind of our bread and butter of what we do, and we do see places like the Trade Center and other commercial areas that we do see as a benefit to the neighborhood and obviously a long-term benefit to the city of Lincoln in general. And we do pride ourselves in working very closely with the planning department before we come and see you guys to try to get all those things right and fit into what works with long-term planning. So we do, of course, hope that you support us in this matter.
I guess one other thing I just thought of, there was testimony about whether this area would provide services for the community. And recognize there is commercial space on the east side of 70th that is designated for those kinds of uses. So we've talked about grocery store or
Right.
other.
I mean, this one kind of shows where that, sorry, I'm making noises with my clips, where this corner is essentially surrounded by commercial zoning. And there have been thoughts, I know on this catty corner property for a grocery store and such, that didn't quite come to fruition yet, but those larger spaces have a much better application of doing that than on the other side of the street, which I actually think would be more intrusive on the neighbors if a grocery store or a gas station or something of that nature were on that side. So we're thinking of quieter services that lead up to a residential neighborhood.
Okay, thank you very much.
I would move that we, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah,
I was just going to say, I would move that we extend the public hearing for 2 weeks.
do we need to do it with all three individually? As a group is fine. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect, thank you.
And it would be on annexation 25008, change of zone 05068Y, and comprehensive plan amendment 25006.
Second, Evans.
Thank you.
I think there's enough questions still arising that that the 2 weeks will give some time to bring more of that information to us, so I'll be supporting this.
Any other comments on this motion? Okay, thank you, Shelley.
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Hebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Approved, 8-0.
Okay. At this time, anyone wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda may do so.
Seeing none, I would move that we adjourn.
Second, Evans.
Shelley?
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Hebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.